talking to you about the City of Sydney design policy. And first of all, I'll provide an overview of the design policy, the benefits and its impact, and then I'll give you some examples of how I think it's really played out in Sydney's public realm. So what is the issue? I mean, essentially over many years, we've really concentrated on the image and identity of tall buildings and the image from the skyline. We also think about the environmental and commercial performance of high-rise, but we don't often think about what's happening on the ground. Like many global cities, Sydney was really developed and came into the fore of high-rise in the 1950s and 60s, when the Miesian model of architecture was very much the norm, of a high-rise as an object, and the tower sat and came down to the ground, and a plaza at the ground floor. Often these were windswept. There are many fine examples. In here I'm showing the City of Sydney Australia Square by Harry Seidler, which is a case in point of a really terrific urban plaza. But more often than not, they are windswept, they kill the street, they've destroyed the street frontage, the active shop fronts, and often destroy more than they create. This is a compelling image, but not such a compelling experience when you're the person on the street. So we decided that we had to do things differently in Sydney. And in the lead up to the 2000 Olympics, there were a number of imperatives. One, really to create a new global city. Two, we had a very ambitious mayor who actually put livability on the agenda. And three, there was a feeling that in real terms, a number of large firms were really dominating the tall building market in downtown Sydney and really keeping it quite closed. It was more like a monopoly. And so it was felt that if we open up the competition in a more transparent way, it'll allow for more innovation, it could provide more certainty, and we could get a better quality public realm. So what is the competitive design policy? There was a new LEP, or Local Environment Plan, in 1994, and then there was an amendment in 2000 with the competitive design policy, which has actually played an enormous part in contributing to the improvement of the public realm and the design excellence of tall buildings generally in Sydney, as well as in terms of technical innovation and environmental sustainability. But I think more importantly is they've contributed in a real and meaningful way to enlivening the city streets and public spaces. The framework is really a statutory framework. So we have the Local Environment Plan, which is a statutory plan, and underneath that is a guideline, which is the Development Control Policy, and within that embedded is the Competitive Design Policy, which promotes design excellence. The key sort of building blocks of that are that it really is a partnership between public and private. There's bilateral agreements in terms of the brief, the program, the deliverables, the jury. There's a minimum of 3 designs that need to be procured, and the jury's decision is final. So it's a very clear process for all parties. The triggers for the competitive design process are, in fact, really all major development, whether it's over 55 metres in height, whether it's it's 1,500 square metres in site area, or it has a capital project of over $100 million. But in real terms, all major private and public development in Sydney is really going to be subjected to a design competition because of these criteria. And I would also note that in no other city globally have such competitions been mandated through these planning instruments. So, the overarching objective is to improve the architectural, urban design and landscape quality of the public realm, and it includes predictable considerations, as you would expect, like land use, setbacks, building use, street frontage heights, massing, modulation of buildings, etc., but also public interest considerations, such as environmental impacts, whether it's overshadowing or wind tunnel effects, heritage considerations, as well as improvements to the public realm, the connectivity to the pedestrian network, and the quality of urban design. These public interest concerns are really what is most notable. So that it's more than about design excellence. It's not just a mere aesthetic consideration. It's really about the public benefit that it has really evolved out of this policy that is key and pivotal. So what are the incentives for a developer to buy into this process? Well, there are a number of mechanisms, and I think the certainty, I think, is one of the key things. For example, there's a two-stage process which mitigates risk. First, the building envelope, which is the kind of key parameters which determine the commercial imperative of the development, whether it's the height, the floor space ratio, the car parking. All of these are determined in the stage 1DA. And then in the second stage, and that's really mitigates risk for the developer. It also mitigates risk for the general public because you really pretty much know if there's going to be any overshadowing, that has been contained within the stage 1DA, where there's going to be traffic impacts, that's been contained within the stage 1DA. So the detailed design considerations are the subject of the stage 2 process, which is where the competition plays out, and where you can see the detailed design of not only the building, but the public realm. Interestingly, the competition can be waived if, in fact, there are no adverse impacts on adjoining development and the public realm. And so, therefore, again, there is a degree of flexibility in how this plays out. But probably for most developers, the most significant incentive is the 10% bonus if they can be seen to demonstrate design excellence. And this not only gives them an incentive, and this bonus is in terms of height or floor space, not both, but also it's a great incentive in terms of participating, but also it allows them to transfer floor space and get a discount on heritage floor space. Notably, it provides a significant uplift in development value, and of course that is very attractive to most developers. So what is the policy of innovation? Well, the focus on design excellence and public benefit is obviously what I've been banging on about so far, but it's more than that. It's the quantum and the impact. To date, there have been over 100 design competitions in the city of Sydney, and most of those are in downtown city centre, but also in the more urban renewal areas around the edges of the city, where in Green Square notably, and the fringes of the city. But I would say in the research that's been done by the University of New South Wales and interviewing proponents who've been participated, without a doubt and without exception, everyone has agreed, of those interviewed, that the design competition has raised the standard of the urban design and the quality of buildings in the city of Sydney. And that's not only including the design, but also the activation of streets and ground level uses and pedestrian access and through-site links. So it seems to be of something which is of benefit, not just to communities, but to the developers as well. So here we have an image of downtown Sydney, and here you can see some of the examples in the downtown area alone, of which I will talk about a few in a little while. But of course there are also the urban renewals areas which are off the slide that I'm talking about as well. But so there's the sheer quantum of development that has gone through the design competition, but there's also the quality of the outcomes. The quality of the outcomes has resulted in a whole lot of benefits. We've achieved design excellence in terms of architectural design, the improved quality of the public domain and landscapes, the improved in pedestrian networks, which is quite profound, improved in separation, setbacks and urban form, and there's been design innovation through collaboration of emerging firms and international companies as well. And also, there's a lot of issues that have been mitigated. The environmental impacts in terms of overshadowing, solar access, visual and acoustic privacy, wind and reflectivity are all considerations that have to be addressed, as well as the public domain impacts, view corridor impacts, heritage impacts, as well as the streetscape. So all in all, it's a win-win for the public interest as well as the private development. And the process, too, has had a huge rethink about how development is procured in this city. It has become a much more transparent, non-prescriptive approach to regulation, which enables debating of the design issues as you go through the process rather than after the development application is lodged. And this balances both public and private interests, as I believe. So in terms of the process, we see a huge increase in the transparency and procurement, shared ownership, where both sides, the city and the proponent, agree on who the partners are or who the participants are in design competitions. They agree on the jurors, they agree on the brief. And it's a flexible and an adaptive process. As I said, it can be waived if in fact there are no impacts on the adjoining property, but more often than not, proponents decide to do the design competition. And it's improved the design culture in the city as well. And it also provides certainty for the developer and certainty for the community. I think overall though, aside from the significant uplift it does give to the developer, it also enhances the competitiveness of the development in the marketplace, but also the competitiveness of the city overall in terms of making a better, well-designed, more amenable city. It also mitigates the monopolies of the larger firms who were dominating the architectural building industry in our city in any case. And it also mitigates the commercial risk, as I mentioned. So let me just talk about a few case studies in downtown Sydney, which I think really demonstrate the benefits of process and the benefits to the city in terms of high quality public realm and facilities. So the examples I'm going to talk about are 1 Bly Street, Liberty Place, 60 Martin Place, Wynyard Place, the EY Centre and Quay Quarter. And any of you who are in the first plenary session today, you would have heard the 3XN Kim Nielsen talking about Quay Quarter and also Ken Shuttleworth talking about Wynyard Place. But I'll just touch on them in a very superficial way in this, the next few minutes. So 1 Bly Street was commissioned in 2006. It was an international design competition and it brought together local firm Architectus with German firm Ingerhoven. The building was completed in 2011. It's 130 metres high. It had 6 competitors, jointly agreed by the developer and the City of Sydney. And as you can see, and you'll see that I'm not showing any of the building's tops, I'm just showing the bases to demonstrate the point I'm trying to make about the benefits to the public realm. But it was, and it still is, a very innovative double-skinned building with an atrium through the whole shaft of the building, and it has a very particular elliptical form, and I don't know whether many of you have seen it, but it actually captures the sun and captures the views and the aspect looking towards the harbour. What's significant is because of the level change, and this happens on many sites in the city, it actually negotiates the level change through a through-site link and an extraordinarily generous bank of stairs, almost like the Spanish Steps in Rome, which captures the winter sun and is shaded captures the winter sun and is shaded in the summer. But it also becomes an informal place where people sit during lunchtime and to meet people. It also has a cafe and a through-site all hours access through the base of the building and a more defined, contained green space to the south. So all in all, a very public and accessible public realm which offers diversity and activity day and night. The second example I want to talk about is Liberty Place, done by the architectural firm of FJMT, completed in 2013. It's a 42-storey building of 72,000 square metres of commercial office and retail, and it incorporates an adjoining heritage building as an extraordinary environmental credentials. It was really in a rundown part of the city between Pitt and Castlereagh Streets in the retail quarter. And it was an amalgamation of a number of sites which together really do not create more than the sum of the parts. But through this very nuanced intervention, they've been able to stitch in an existing heritage building as well as connect it to the 2 streets through a level change through the building. And again, you can see the use of quite another, I don't know whether this is the pointer, another grand stair which connects Pitt Street to Castlereagh Street, the introduction of a new laneway which captures the lunchtime sun. This is taken outside of lunchtime, but usually it's very sunny during this time of day, and enables people to walk from one street to the other mid-block at any time of day or night. Again, a fine example of integration with the public realm, a very high quality building, but also a really great open space. 60 Martin Place is on Sydney's premier civic space, Martin Place. It's lined with institutional buildings which have quite closed frontages, banks and the like. And this one is a complete change to that. It's a 32-storey building, currently under construction, and again with very high environmental credentials. But the reference design imposed very significant constraints on this site. One, that it could not increase the overshadowing of Martin Place, which is very popular during lunchtime, and also that the heritage building to the south, or to the north, St Stephen's Church, where the floor space was being transferred to onto this site, needed to be protected. And so it developed. The response is very, very nuanced in the sense of a couple of factors. One, it still responds to the institutional environment of Martin Place in that respectful way by having a fairly closed facade to Martin Place. But once you go through the doors, there is a 5-storey atrium which actually reveals the elevation of St Stephen's Church to the north. So bringing the indoors into the interior of that space and making a 5-level public space day and night, which is also connected to the subway. As I mentioned, it has high environmental credentials and it's under construction now. But again, a different response to the earlier examples that I've shown, but also a very amenable public space which respects the adjoining public place, that is Martin Place, but provides something much, much more than what is already in the precinct. Wynyard Place has a very significant, has a similar kind of response as the Martin Place project. It is to be completed in 2019, and it's by Make Architects with Architectus, and it's being developed by Brookfield. It's over probably Sydney's busiest transport hub, and it will be a redevelopment as part of the metro station there as well. But it also includes the restoration of a number of key heritage buildings, Shell House and 285 George Street, and a revitalised Wynyard Lane. What is notable about this competition scheme is that unlike the other schemes before it, the other schemes as part of the competition, it actually elevated the lift core above the public domain so that it creates a very open, permeable ground floor so that you can connect George Street all the way through to Wynyard Park, which is on the other side of the block, and through this very generous galleria, if you like. So similar in approach to the Martin Place project, where the public space is within the building, but it's very much accessible 24/7 and generous and giving back in terms of its approach. The EY Centre, another building by FGMT, is on George Street and is part of a very complex block called the Alfred, Pitt, Daly and George Street block, which I actually was involved in as a consultant to the City of Sydney a number of years ago, where the development controls were really not playing out the way they were intended to because of the very unusual block configuration of triangular blocks which had been developed over time from the earliest days of white settlement in Sydney. And so through some natty floor space transfer, we were able to transfer floor space between one land holding and another and open up some new lanes, connected lanes which had now become dead ends, and create some new smaller pocket squares within the block. And as you'll see through at the end of this presentation, there are something like 4 design competitions that have actually been held in this block to date. And so I think the public benefit has been quite significant in this one particular block. So this is a terrific building. It's actually a beautiful architectural form, a dynamic fluid form, a glazed facade with the timber screens behind it. But I'm not going to talk about the tower, I'm going to talk about the public domain. But again, it lifts up off the street. It actually respects the street frontage of George Street and then wraps around into the site, welcoming people down into the lower level, which is behind it, and a new urban square. Down a very generous flight of stairs. But they also managed, the architects also managed to not only create this new public realm which wraps into the mid-block space, but interpret the heritage of the site. There were like over 10,000 artefacts collected from the site, and these have been incorporated into this stair here so that you can see them through here. So, oops, I think I went the, oh, I don't know what I've done, sorry. Okay, sorry. And the last project I'd like to talk about is Quay Quarter, one of the largest developments in the city at this time, a collaboration of no more than, or as much as 7 architects. Of course, the ones that you would know about are 3XN, and in collaboration with local architects BVN, who are responsible for the tower development, but also other firms including Make, SJB, JPW, and young and emerging architects Sylvester Fuller and Carter Williamson, who also got a gig on this major project downtown Sydney. And I think this is really pays a testament to the opportunities of young, small firms to be part of the larger development game in the City of Sydney through this competition process, because often they are partnered with larger firms, which gives them a mentoring environment, a place where they can take risks within a much more carefully managed and oversight. I think the significant thing about this is it not only provides a world-class tower, which is, again, like the others, has amazing environmental credentials, but it also reconnects streets and has a high-quality public realm, which I think you may have seen in the plenary session. It's also already won a planning award and has restored a number of heritage buildings, or will restore a number of heritage buildings when it's complete. So here is the development. You can see the tower. You can see the main tower, but this block here with all the other buildings done by all different architects is part of this site, and the floor space from this site has been transferred onto the tower site here, which is much bigger than the one which has been demolished, and enable the heritage buildings to be refurbished as part of this renewal. You can also see that the new laneways have been completed to actually complete the connectivity through the block and back into this laneway system to the east and west. So what are the public benefits? What is the broader outcome for the city? You can see in this last slide, the 2 projects, the 2 examples that I talked about were the EY Centre here and the AMP Capital Development, which is this site here, the 3XN Tower here, as well as the smaller block next to it. And all these dark grey sites are also the subjects of design competitions as well. You can also see that all of this new public realm, which has actually been connected up and improved as part of it. So it's not just a site-by-site benefit, but it's the connection of all those sites working together that have actually not only created exemplars in terms of high-rise design and environmental performance, but a new and improved connected street network with higher quality urban design, public spaces and landscape. So I think this very clearly demonstrates the benefit not only to the development industry, but to the city at large. The bigger picture of Sydney's public realm is very well looked after in terms of the design competitions in the City of Sydney. So thank you.